If you guys like the Pittsburgh Steelers, then like this video. I'm trying to get as many likes as possible on today's video. Help show the bosses that, yeah, we should be doing Steelers videos every single day. So help me help you. Like this video right now. Getting a little wild and wacky on today's Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I am Tom Downey with 5 different superstar trade targets and ideas for the Steelers. As the offseason has already seen all of the chaos so far, and maybe, just maybe, they're not done yet. First up, how about an actual franchise QB? One that you feel probably a little bit better about than maybe drafting or trading up for a Malik Willis, a Desmond Ridder, a Kenny Pickett, whatever. That is Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. And now for each player, we'll look at why it makes sense for Pittsburgh, what the trade could end up looking like, and what the player looks like. Now, Murray, I think, can be a franchise QB. If I'm being honest, though, I'm not all the way in yet. Despite being a former number 1 overall pick, the Kyler we saw down the stretch of 2021, including postseason, against the first half of this campaign, very different QBs. The completion percentage dips. The yards plummet. The rushing yards actually went up, which gives me concern about why that happened. The total touchdowns plummet, and despite fumbling 12 times, he never actually lost any of them, which I would suspect will regress next year. Despite Murray not being great down the stretch, his overall first half was MVP caliber. And I know we got Mitchell Trubisky truthers and Mason Rudolph believers and whatnot. The actual franchise QB for the Pittsburgh Steelers is not on this roster. It's not Trubisky. His contract is that of a stopgap guy who can make more if they do end up starting him. Mason Rudolph is on a backup contract. Instead of giving up picks to go get a QB or gambling on one in round 1 at 20, why not get a bit more of a proven option? Now, because Murray's coming off the down year, or down back half of the year, and because the Cardinals haven't quite paid him yet, and it'll be expensive, which, we'll mention momentarily, I think it would be more than Matthew Stafford trade, less than what Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson went for, because Murray is younger than Stafford, but not as proven as the other 2 guys. So it's 2 firsts, a second, and a future third. A very big haul for Pittsburgh to give up. Maybe Arizona wants a little bit more, but I'm trying to keep it somewhat realistic for the Steelers. Now, once you trade for Kyler, you're going to pay him, and it might cost you more than $45 million a year. Maybe you can talk Kyler into $43 million, but in this scenario, you're acquiring a franchise QB. Clearly, you think that he would be one, and you would go all for it. So if you don't want to give up that much asset for Kyler Murray and pay him a big-time deal, I actually understand where you're coming from. I would also feel more comfortable about Kyler than the other QBs this year. So I'm going to leave this up to you guys. Actual democracy here. Do you want to trade for Kyler Murray? Y for yes or N for no? This is the pinned comment on today's video. So that ad break comes here on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Next up, let's go defense this time around. The only defensive player on this list, because I think the defense is in pretty good shape when you're not going to trade for a big-time safety when you got to pay Minka. James Bradberry, the cornerback from the New York Giants. Now, he is very much on the block, but getting a guy with 7 interceptions and all of the pass breakups past 2 years is appealing to me. Now, Bradberry did regress this year. He was targeted more frequently. That is true. Even with the slight jump in completion percentage and the overall jump in catches allowed, that does not explain the massive jump in yards allowed, a big-time figure, and touchdowns allowed. Still, I think Bradberry would be a pretty decent fit for what the Steelers tend to like to do on defense. I would have interest in him, and I don't think he'd be that expensive. So what I want you guys to do right now is name a player who you want to go trade for. Is it a Murray, a Bradberry, somebody else altogether? He is a little bit more expensive, Bradberry is, so let me know in the comments section. I don't think there's much of a market right now for James Bradberry. So I'm getting him on the cheap. Giants save salary cap space. That's their main goal of trying to shop Bradberry. Steelers to get their number 1 corner all cost them 7th round pick. Maybe it's a day 3 pick swap, but I don't think he'd be that expensive. And yes, my deals are slanted a little bit more in favor of the Steelers side of things. The cornerback room for Pittsburgh, if you add a Bradberry, I think you're set. I think Witherspoon's best as a 2, Wallace as a 2, and probably more of like a 3 on the outside. I think you're fine in the nickel. Maybe James Pierre emerges, but I think a number 1 corner would be great for Pittsburgh. Let's get really wacky here. How about DK Metcalf? My boy Thomas Mott's talked about him before. I am intrigued. I don't think the Seahawks would trade away DK Metcalf because he's young enough to fit their rebuilding timeline. However, I do think that the phrasing they're using is the same that they were using for Russell Wilson. At this point, you can't put anything past the Seahawks organization, and the receiving market is so weird, it could happen. The biggest issue with getting a DK Metcalf, even though he on the outside with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool is a dynamic, awesome wide receiver trio, one of the best, if not the outright best in the NFL, is the money. You got to pay DK Metcalf $25 million plus per year. You're probably looking around a big deal for Deontay Johnson. I don't know if Pittsburgh wants to pay that type of money, but if you want to be aggressive, maybe you find a way to make that happen. Now, the issue here is the trade cost, and all these things are why Metcalf's my stretch on this one, and I got a different receiver in mind in a minute. But first, a second for DK, and a 5th coming back as well. Very similar trade compensation to what the Packers and Chiefs got for DK Metcalf, or for Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, excuse me. Metcalf's not as good as those two guys, but he is younger, and that is why I believe the trade value would be similar. It's a lot to give up, plus the contract. I wonder if Seattle or Pittsburgh would instead keep an eye on a different receiver as opposed to DK Metcalf. So how about Brandin Cooks? Now, Cooks is not as good as Metcalf, but Brandin Cooks, who has been the ultimate dealt receiver, he's like cash considerations in baseball, always getting moved somehow. He has consistently, when healthy, not dealing with concussion problems, been a 1,000-yard guy. That consistency, that reliability, regardless of who the QB is, does matter. His numbers didn't change that much going from Deshaun Watson to Davis Mills. Does that say more about Davis Mills and Deshaun Watson or Cooks? I'm not sure. Now, Houston wants a second-round pick. Background here, they said, no, we're not going to shop Brandin Cooks. No, we're not doing it. But, hypothetically, if we did, we would want a second-rounder. I don't think you get a second-round pick for Brandin Cooks. A third-round pick, though, that's much more in line. Again, I'm making sure Pittsburgh wins these deals. So Cooks would be expensive, but not nearly as much as DK. I think you're talking maybe $20 million for Brandin Cooks. I think you save at least $5 million APY there. So less expensive from a cost standpoint via trade and compensation salary-wise. So who would you rather trade for? BC for Brandin Cooks or DK for DK Metcalf? Former first-round pick Mekhi Becton next up on my list. And if you're going, hold on, Tom, the Jets just spent a first-round pick on Mekhi Becton. Why would they shop him? Well, they want to have George Fant and Mekhi Becton compete for left tackle. They might take a right tackle in round 1, and that means someone's on the bench, and they are upset with Becton for conditioning and shape issues, and that has been reported repeatedly by ESPN as the Jets themselves are saying it. So maybe they move on altogether as they try to demand more things. Now, when he was healthy in 2020, barely played last year, Becton was good. Yes, he allowed 7 sacks, but only 1 hit, 15 hurries. Indication to me, his quarterback took too many of those sacks. That's a QB issue there. Wouldn't be a problem for whoever you have back there. Trubisky can move a little bit after all. I don't hate Dan Moore. I just think he's better as a swing tackle. I don't buy him as a left tackle at this particular point. So I would strongly consider the idea of going after and acquiring Mekhi Becton. Did I put the trade in here, Producer Jack? I'm not sure if I did. I got it written down if not. I don't think he'd be that expensive for there it is. Thank you, Jack. For the Steelers to go get. I don't think they're going to get a first for him. I think in this scenario, they are drafting a tackle and then trading away Mekhi Becton. So I'll give them a second and a conditional day 3 pick next year that could be worth even more to make the value better. His trade value is tricky because teams don't bail on a first-round pick after 2 years unless there's a problem. and that drives down their value. But I'd gamble on Mekhi Becton in the event if he becomes available truly with the New York Jets.